Yes.
So,
Sorry.
Chintaka, while we start, there is a possibility that people will be coming in and going out. I have put it in the system where anybody who comes in has to go in, be silent. But there is a possibility, you know, they might be able to change it around. So do mute them when you see them, because I made you a co-host.
Okay.
Can we mute everybody who is not speaking, Pastor Kendall?
I have set it that way, but there are some instances people have some jilmat that they do that they can actually open themselves up. So that's why there had to be other co-hosts who just go mute them.
Okay.
I have set it that way that when they come in, they'll be muted, but I have found instances where some people have been able to unmute.
Pastor Kendall.
Have any of the speakers asked for the sharing of the screen, or are we just going to go on like that without that?
If they want to share the screen, they have the right to do so because I made them co-host. But none has asked so far. Now, has anybody spotted Ruanti here? I'm actually not seeing Ruanti.
Kendall, Ruanti is in the waiting room.
Okay.
No.
There are 38 people. There are 38 people in the waiting room.
I'm actually not seeing Ruanti there either.
No, I'm here.
She's here.
She's here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let's carry on then. We have 175 people now, no? 171.
Yeah.
171.
So Ruanti, I have made you co-host so that you can, if you want to share a screen or come in at any time, you could do. The way we are going, I just instructed the others before that we will give 5 minutes to each panelist. And at the 4-minute mark, I will give a small reminder that 1 minute left. Okay. Father Mark, over to you.
Has the subwarden come on? Is he already with us?
Subwarden will not join us today. He has some urgent meeting. He will get the recording from me.
Fine. Okay. Pastor Kendall, I think you can begin, no?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, to all the parents of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, welcome to you. This event that is organized by the PTA of St. Thomas's College. We are very happy to have each of you in our midst. We are also privileged with 4 experts in their own fields who would be speaking to us on various questions that we have predetermined and posted to them. So I would kindly request each of you, if you could mute your mics when you come in, so that you don't interrupt the whole program, and so the panelists can continue with their entire presentation. So this moment, I would invite Reverend Roshan to open in prayer, and we'll hand it over to Father Mark.
Good evening and warm welcome. Let's commence this evening in prayer and ask God's blessings upon our gathering. Let us pray. Loving Father, we thank you that as parents, we can come before you, thanking you for sustaining us through this very difficult period in the history perhaps of the world, where many fields have been disrupted, including the field of education. Father, we thank you that you are still a loving and caring God. We thank you for the promise that you are with us in every situation in life. We thank you for sustaining us as a college and for giving us the privilege and opportunity of still having some form of education during this period of curfews and lockdowns and travel restrictions and closures of school. And so this evening, Lord, as we listen to those very much involved in education and in the field of medicine, we pray that as parents and as teachers, you would enlighten our knowledge and bless this evening to our hearts, to our lives, and to our homes. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Now I invite Father Mark to introduce the panel.
Good evening, parents, teachers, friends. Welcome to this special webinar organized by the Parent Teacher Association. I'm grateful to the PTA for having taken this initiative, one among many that they are helping the school with over the next few months. Very special welcome to our 4 panelists. Pastor Kendall has already mentioned that they are each an eminent member of their own fields. Firstly, on our list, we have Mrs. Nirmali Wickramasinghe, who is not a stranger to many in the field of education, a well-known educationist, a person who has served in education field for 46 years in the government sector, in the private sector, private schools, as well as in international school, the international school sector. She is a graduate of science and she has taught science. She has been a vice principal of Bishop's College, principal of Ladies College. She is now a consultant to Gateway Schools. And she has also been part of education reform movements over the years, served on the National Education Commission as well. And currently she serves as a member of the Board of Governors of St. Thomas's College, the first lady to sit on the board. And she adds a lot of value in terms of bringing education principles, up-to-date educational ideas to the board. And she keeps the board on the straight and narrow in a sense when it needs to be kept on the straight and narrow. So thank you very much, Mrs. Wickramasinghe, for being with us. Her husband is a Thomian, and she has an affinity to St. Thomas's, despite being a ladies' college girl, and who normally would have an affinity to Royal College, perhaps. But anyway, she is very much a Thomian in heart. We next have Ruwanthi Dicikera, an accomplished Sri Lankan playwright. I'm sure many of you have seen her plays and watched her plays. She's a screenwriter, a theater director. She's an Eisenhower Fellow, and at the moment, co-artistic director of Stages Theatre Group. Ruwanthi brings a very important dimension to our discussion this evening, and that is the dimension of being a parent herself. And a lot of what she has shared over the last few weeks, I'm sure you've all seen the famous, it's now a famous video actually. Everyone's talking about this video that was put out. She has engaged with some of us in the field of education, and we are very grateful that she has accepted our invitation to be with us this evening to share some of the creative ideas that we can bring in to the school system at this time when children are under so much pressure from the education system that is such a burden to many of them. Next, we have Dr. Tara de Mel, again, someone well known in education. She has served as the Secretary Minister of Education some time ago, at a time when there were some very important landmark reforms that were introduced in the field of education. And we're very grateful that she has taken the time to be with us this evening. At the moment, she is one of the co-founders of the Education Forum Sri Lanka, of Mindful Educators Sri Lanka, and she's a member of the Worldwide Commission to Educate All Kids Post-Pandemic. These are all groups that are looking at very specifically how do we handle the whole area of education in the post-pandemic age, in this new normal. She has been the vice chairperson of the National Education Commission, and she is familiar with some of the education reforms which are in the pipeline at the moment. Thank you, Dr. Tara, for being with us. And finally, we have one of our own, again, Dr. Ashan Patirana, who is a doctor of medicine. He's secretary of the All Thomians Health Professionals Association, and at the moment working at the Health Promotion Bureau and managing the digital and social media He is going to speak about the medical impact of the whole online exercise that we have been engaged in. Dr. Ashan helps the school in many ways as a doctor. He's one of our school doctors, and we are very glad that he also consented to be part of this panel this evening. So thank you all four of you for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm sure you will each challenge us in different ways. Each of you brings a different perspective, and we look forward to that challenge as parents and as teachers, so that together we can focus on how best to go forward as a school with the child at the center of all things. So thank you, and I hope you all benefit and enjoy this evening. Over to you, Pastor Kendall.
Okay, thank you very much, Warden. So we will start with the questions that we have predetermined. So Mrs. Nirmali, if you can start and do your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kendall, and thank you, Father Mark, for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. Good evening, everybody. I would just like to outline the reforms, the many reforms that have taken place, I would say, during the last 50 years. We inherited the British system and curriculum, but I'm happy to say that having been in this system for 46 years, I have witnessed and I have actually been in several reform processes. So I would begin by 1970, when I actually sat for my A-levels, and I was in a system which still exists in the British system, where at grade 9 you move on to science, arts, etc. So as a student at grade 9, I moved on to the science section, and then I went on to do O-levels and A-levels in science, and then entered university as a science student. In 1971, 72, with Premadas Udagama as a secretary, they moved on, they actually introduced the commerce stream. And then when I passed out as a graduate in 1975, I was plunged into the first huge reforms with the NCG and HNC. Now here I like to say that really it moved on to child-centered education at that point of time, although the understanding of this shift, which has taken place through so many years, is still experimental. It's still experimental in some ways, right? Then because I have only 5 minutes, I will get on to the 1980s, when they had a further reformation process, where they introduced subjects like life skills, where they had huge curriculum changes, because I was teaching A-level zoology and chemistry at the time. And when I did the subjects, I was studying rat and cockroach and things, whereas they moved on to human biology, and there were massive changes in curricula. And I'm going to jump again because I have to go fast. I'm getting on to the reforms at the turn of the last century and the beginning of this century. Here, I'm going to take this opportunity because Tara is here. Tara, can you put on your on? We would like to see you. We have to say a big thank you to I mean, I was with them in the reforms, and Tara, we have to say a very big thank you for all that happened at that time. Professor Lakshman Jayatilaka, Tara, and of course, we can't forget Rajiva Vijayasinghe, who played a huge role in what happened at that time. Isn't that so, Tara? And I was very, very happy to be in those reform processes where there really was a shift. There really was a shift. And teachers and students and all began to understand that this is a real shift from teacher-centered to child-centered, where they introduced SBA, school-based assessments. And even today, when we have gone on to online, these are all things we can still use. And there was a whole list of tools which came in. They were teachers were in the 92, correct me if I'm wrong, Tara, I think the 92 zones and the 200 odd divisions, there was a massive teaching program that went on. I was also in several of those teaching programs, and some of the things that went on was group work. I mean, it was very scientifically based on the Bloom's taxonomy, on the multiple intelligence theory, the different learning styles. So you had children moving on from application to analysis to creativity to evaluation and creativity, and many of the reforms at the time went on to group work, which worked on the interpersonal skills of the children. Teachers who are not used to this were very upset. They said, do we give the same mark? And we were told, yes, you just get them to work together, because this is such an important skill. You can't have one bossing, you can't have one behind. It has to be group work. So we moved on. The system moved on. There were this
1 minute more.
Oh my gosh, I have so much more to tell. Okay, so then it went on to value education, and also at A level, when we had they introduced the project work, which was fabulous. I hope even at the next time I can tell you some of the project work I had witnessed. And of course, I haven't even got on to the next stage. Maybe Tara will take that over, where we go on to onlining and the learning systems, the learning management systems that we are going into. But even online now, like the next step went on to engagement and various subjects like PTS and the role play, debates, all that came in. So it was just a fabulous shift. And I have to say bilingualism, which I have to talk about. Tara, thank you again, right? You and Rajiva made such a big difference in this country, the Amity Schools program. And now from bilingualism, we've gone into full English medium at O levels with only one subject. So if children want to do so, yes. But of course, children who come from English-speaking homes where they do not work in their mother tongue, I would actually advise them to not to alienate themselves from this country, but go not only with bilingualism,
we have gone beyond
just give me a minute with bilingualism if possible, and also sign language. Okay, I'm sure others are going to talk about. I was going to go into to what is happening now, but okay, at least I've said this. I'm so grateful for all the reforms that have taken place, because I've been in the thick of it, and it's wonderful. If you go to that exhibition, Nava Nipayu, done by the children of this country, you will see how creative they are. And that is Tara, because of that shift that you facilitated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nirmali. Okay, now we will have Dr. Tara, who will address her question and made a bit more clarification on this. So Dr. Tara, to you.
Yes, so I would like to really talk a little bit about the current COVID education crisis, to give a snapshot of what's happening in the world and take the second 5 minutes of the allocated time for me to discuss some of the reforms, because I think contextually it's very important to understand what's happening globally. So February, March 2020, COVID pandemic hit us with one crisis, and that was the public health crisis. It was obvious, and it was the main crisis, because obviously the health system was completely devastated. The economic crisis followed suit very, very rapidly with the economic fallout. But the third leg of the tripod, as I call it, the third crisis has largely been ignored, underrated, and often trivialized, and that is the education crisis. It's only a few months ago that actually even the global entities like the UNICEF, UNESCO, and so on started flashing the torchlight on this extremely important crisis, which is taking over the entire world and which is going to stay with us for decades, long after the health crisis and the economic crisis subside. So the COVID education crisis is going to end up in an education catastrophe, generational catastrophe, and let me tell you why. 16 months ago, when the children were ousted from educations, most of them landed with zero education. Here we had a situation that for 16 months, children were without an education, whilst their brain was growing, their emotional maturity was going, but in tandem, there was no education that should have ideally gone. So for example, we had a kid who was in grade 4, say March 2020, zero education, and I'll tell you why I'm saying zero education, particularly in countries like Sri Lanka. In 2021, March or April, he momentarily goes into grade 5 and perhaps starts preparing for the grade 5 scholarship exam, but has had 15 months or more of no education. So that's an extremely serious issue, which I would urge everyone to consider very seriously. Let's take a quick look at the global numbers. So like I said, March 2020, 192 countries, there was general ouster from all schools. Apparently, even in World War II, all schools didn't shut down instantaneously. It did happen last year. 1.7 billion with a B, billion kids were ousted from education. These are UNESCO and UNICEF statistics I'm quoting. So here we had a group of children in, say, bucket 1, which is like physical in-person learning, shunted into a second bucket, which is called the online or virtual platform, and that's what I'm going to elaborate on now. And then we had a third group which had no education at all. I'm going to zoom in on the second bucket because that is the word that's fashionable in most parts of the world, particularly in Sri Lanka as well. So let's look at what is this so-called virtual school or online school. I just want to focus on 3 issues here. One is the inequity issue. We have huge inequity issues, inequity in internet access and in device access and affordability. Even in countries like the US and Canada, until they started opening schools, about 9% of students, 6% of students did not have access to internet-based education. Those are the developed countries, mind you. Of course, you look at South Asia, like India, Pakistan, 90 million students without any access to online education, 25 million in Pakistan. So Latin America, the same. So even in the most endowed countries, the internet access to education was very, very paltry. So we don't have to discuss details about the Sri Lankan system because online is now dubbed on tree, on mountain, on
1 minute
rooftop
more.
education. So we had, that's the second issue. The third main issue that came up with this situation is the ability to oust yourself from education. So here we have a student staring at the screen for 10 hours a day, 8, 5, 6. What happens is he can oust himself from education. I have not touched the issues connected to the cyber dangers, which I'm sure Ruanti and the others will focus on. So therefore, in my next 5 minutes, I'm going to expose the necessity for reopening schools, the necessity for choreographing reopening, and why it can be done and why it should be done, and how we should encourage all our governments to speedily reopen schools, because this online education is a farce. It's a myth that needs to be busted, because a large majority of not only our students globally, as I explained, are without any form of education, then they are in fact in the bucket 3 without any education. So I will pause at this point and I will pick up later on. Please feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we will move to Ms. Ruanti. Ruanti, over to you.
Thank you, Pastor Kendall. This is not my, I'm not going to take, this is not my 5 minutes. I just want to say I'm very appreciative of St. Thomas's College for its initiatives in the pandemic. Initiatives even like this, and I'm aware of many more, and I really appreciate the manner in which the school has strived to keep the child at the center of its decision making in this pandemic. I was given 2 questions, and I'm going to first tell you what those questions are so that you can understand what I'm trying to answer. The first question that was given to me was, what are the child-centered, creative and innovative methods that can be used in online education? So now I suspect that this question was given to me because I'm an artist and people assume that, you know, I would know creative and innovative methods of online education. But actually what I want to do without getting into the creative and innovative methods, I want us to focus a little bit on this, actually entirely on this word child-centered, because sometimes I think we use it without understanding what it really means, and also understanding that it means different things in different contexts. And here I'm talking as a parent, and I'm talking directly to the parents in this meeting. Child-centered obviously means the child is right at the center and everything revolves around the child, right? Now, in a physical classroom setup, this means that, you know, the lesson is aimed at the general capacity of the children, right? And the child then fits into this general group, and the experience of the child is collective learning. In online education, it's not a collective experience. It's a isolated experience of learning for this child. So when we trying to work out what child-centered learning in online learning is, I really urge parents first to work out the different capacities and the constitutions of each of your children. Because the biggest mistake we can make is we imagine that just because child A can do it, child B can do it, and child C must do it also, right? So on child-centeredness in online education begins with a parent's understanding of who their child really is, right? And if parents don't take the trouble to do this, then we cannot expect the teachers to be able to respond to our children either, right? We have to work out the strengths and weaknesses of each of our children. And we need to work, and through that, we'll be able to work out the limits and the dangers of prolonged digital exposure to each child. And this kind of, the dangers of online education or the impact of online education on children can be several, depending on the child's constitution, personality. Some children get anxious, they get withdrawn, they get depressed. Some children get addicted. They can be just addicted to screens. Some children get addicted to dangerous material on screens like pornography or extremism. Some children experience deep disconnectedness. They are disconnected from themselves. They're disconnected from the other people around them in their own family. Some children turn violent and they turn aggressive. And in some cases, there are very few cases for very introverted children, the online education experience actually can bring them great confidence, but these are very sort of few and far between. My point is the work starts with us as parents, right? There is no one size fits all solution to online education. And in the moment we as parents take decisions in a state of either panic or competition or insecurity.
1 minute more.
Right, the sort of questions based sort of on the basis of, oh my goodness, all the other children are in 10 hours of online school, what's wrong with my child? The moment we take decisions based on feelings like this, we are blinded to the needs of the limits of our children. And we are also blinded to the dangers that we might be pushing them towards, right? So my answer to this question, which is it's a good question. What are the child-centered, creative and innovative online methods we can use? My plea to all parents is first, just start with child-centeredness and observe your children and attend to their individual needs and their vulnerabilities when it comes to online education, because they have very little support at this time, very little intervention other than from us. And this is the beginning of child-centeredness when it comes to online education, an understanding of this. And this understanding communicated to teachers and educationists after this would be the second step. And then we can move on to being creative and innovative. That is my answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohanty. Okay, Dr. Ashan, we will move to you now.
Thank you, Kendall. So the question that was given to me was to discuss the effects on a child's health with regard to the online education. And well, I think like there are so many dimensions when you talk about health, because a lot of people expect like the sickness and the wellness. So in terms of wholesome development, we talk about the social development, the physical, the psychological, and the spiritual side of things. So during this lockdown and the shutdown of schools, the children have been compromised on all 4 domains, because most of the discussion is around the psychological problems. But don't forget that the children who are not having engaged in sports, not having the opportunity to play with other kids, are having childhood obesity. And in Sri Lanka, we've been seeing how the childhood obesity was growing and becoming a problem. Now it's going to become even worse. So what I would like to highlight is that this education part that has been shut down, a lot of people think that simply because the lessons are given online, you can bridge what the children have been missing. And it's a big mistake if we think the social development, which is one of the most important parts of education, cannot be gapped through this online education. So the children are losing their ability to connect with each other. Their social and emotional skills are getting like lost in this whole turmoil, and the whole routine of going to school, like the attitude of following a timetable, these things, the children are simply disorientated. So our other speakers have spoken about how anxiety have set in, how depression have come in, and all of these things have accumulated to a situation where children are developing psychological, social, and the spiritual side of things. When we were in school, every day, like we were exposed to something spiritual, something other than the classwork before we start school. All of this has been going missing for about 1.5 years, and the guidance. So as it was discussed earlier, some children experience this differently. But like one small topic came up about what are the dangers of online education. So we have all come across this thing with the screen addiction or the online addiction. But the problem is we are sending mixed messages. We are asking children to study online. We are giving them tablets and all the study material is online. And we are at the same time asking them not to get addicted to this. So this puts the parents as well as the kids in a very difficult situation. So to be honest, let's get to the real problem of it. Like, how do we tackle this? So how do these screens come in the same category as addictive substances like tobacco, alcohol, like let it be drugs or even sugar addiction? So all of these things have one thing in common: the instant gratification. So the moment you get something, like the screen has become a shortcut to get these small dopamine doses. We are all seeking these dopamine doses, and the screens have become the best source of it. So the moment you get a message, the moment you get a like, a comment, or something good said about you, so the social media has come into play for the adults. In the same way, the gaming and these apps have been developed for kids in a way that they get addicted to this stuff. So this is where the difference comes, because there was a time when the screens were not considered addictive substance. Like back in the 90s, the computer was basically something like the calculator. You don't get addicted. Basically, you do something on it and then you walk off it. But even the World Wide Web at that point, known as Web 1.0, was just one directional information flow. So basically, you were the consumer of information and there was nothing more than it. Then comes the so-called Web 2.0, where you become one of the creators of information. You're not just consuming data, but you're giving something back. So you become more engaged with it. So this is the rise of social media, online gaming. And this is the part where the addiction comes into this children's, like the whole concept of getting addicted. And now we are in a much more different situation where some people call it the Web 3.0, where artificial intelligence and machine learning combined with algorithms that will enhance the user experience for individuals. So basically, it's like, hunting down right into deep analytics of our brain, figuring out what are the things that drives addiction to each individual. What addicts me will be like specifically picked up, and the algorithms will make sure that I'm given things to make sure that I'm
1 minute more,
Ashan. Thank you. So that's the type of thing that we're dealing with. So if we are to break out of this cycle, we need to figure out where do we draw this addiction part. And if we are going to ask children not to come online, that's not going to be a good thing to do, because the future employment and, you know, like the job opportunities that will come up in another 10 to 15 years will not be the same that we expect it to be. So if we are going to have kids who have to work in digital platforms, there is no way that we are going to ask kids to not engage with these digital platforms, but we need to ensure, just like the vehicles, right? We have about a dozen people dying of road traffic accidents in Sri Lanka, but that doesn't mean that we are going to ask kids not to, you know, get on a vehicle, but we'd rather teach them how to be safe, how to follow protocols. We'll create policies and we'll try to make the environment safe, because that's what progress is. So the next, during the next 5 minutes, I'll try to discuss how do we bridge this gap, like, because we are sending mixed messages to kids. So how the parents can empower themselves and, you know, like to be a role model and guide these children in the correct path without, you know, confusing them by sending mixed messages saying, do your online work, but don't get addicted to screens. So I will pick it up from the next 5 minutes and leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ashan. Mrs. Nirmali, back to you to continue and take up the next question.
Okay, Tara, actually, I really wanted to address you at this point. Yeah, I think I don't think anybody wants the schools closed. I think this type of forum is a good forum, because one thing that worries me is that even if the schools are open, I've spoken to so many parents who just feel that they're frightened to send their children to school. So, I don't think there's any doubt about everything that we've heard now. Nobody would want their children to be on online school, but there is a problem, and parents are frightened. So I think we need to really work on allaying their fears medically. I don't know, Tara, you're a doctor, you're a medical doctor. So I think we really need to work on that quite a bit, and bring about the awareness of removing that fear, because even if the schools start, you will find that there will be several parents who will be frightened to send their children to school. So I think this is one thing we will have to work on, right? My thing is on how parents can do things with the children at homes, and I've got only 5 minutes. I have so much to say, and I think Ruanti will also talk about this. But I'll just say a few things, maybe the science part of it. One thing is, I think you need to go into their world. It's very, very important that you go into the world of the child. See what they enjoy doing, right? And Ashan, as you said, we are all in this world of computers and all of that. We can't escape from that anymore, right? So we even where their learning goes, I think we will have to adapt to certain things to see that they don't get addicted to unwanted things, and that they will go forward. For example, the flipped classroom, where the research is done at home, where they are stimulated to read or to look at pictures or whatever, what they're going to talk about in the classroom. And then the classroom becomes a hub of talking, right? Group work can be done on all platforms, be it Google Meet, Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of group work being done because I visit all these many classes and classrooms. And yesterday I was in a very interesting class where the teacher, math class, where the teacher actually asked them to make houses out of trapeziums. And she put me onto the different groups, and I was amazed to see the work that the children were producing. So those things are also happening online, but I totally agree. Schools must start. There's no case of children going on like this, but there is a practical problem. And as Tara also said, how many children are getting the opportunity to do this? How much of training has gone on these platforms? We've got to look at all of that, right? Even assessments, we've got to go on to open book assessments. Even with the reforms in the late 1990s, we were talking about open book. We are teachers, everybody has to understand open books are not comprehensions. It's much more than that. So the understanding of all that has to come in. I'll just tell you a few things you can do. Planting, monocots and dicots, right? I think you've got, the children need to get excited to understand that a corn seed will only have one leaf coming out. one cotyledon coming out. A bean seed will have 2. So go into their world, excite them, right? Let them make games. Now, I mean, I said I'll talk about science because I'm sure Ruanti is going to talk about drama and things like that. The food chain rummy, right? Get together with your children, do food chains, do rummy with them, get them to do food chain rummy. There's so much that parents can do, so much of methodology that can be used. I think games are a wonderful vehicle and you can use them for all subjects. History, role play, right? Now, I went into a class where they were doing Rajasingha II and the arrival of the Dutch. And what the teacher said was, okay, again, group work, get into groups. This is this famous Ingrudira Miniskata story. And, you know, one group was the people in the area who were saying, oh my gosh, another person has come in. Now this is going to happen. Other group was actually the king and signing this with and without a chunk of what had to be there. So there are so many innovative things that can be done in the real classroom. And now, because we have no choice, on the online classroom. Flipped classroom is, I think, the way to go at the moment. Because even once we get back into the normal system, there will be a lot of blended learning that will go on. Because as Ashan said, that's the future. We can't escape from that. We are in that. But we've got to use that in a very creative manner. Get them to create. They are very good at creating, you know, little films, little, what you call this, the media, the online little films for, oh, it's not coming, the word is not coming. They are into TikTok. They're connected to TikTok, right? Where the TikTok actually is an educational thing, right? Go into your world. They love dancing. Dance with them. Ashan, you were talking about physical, right? Try and understand the type of dances they like to do. Dance with them.
One more minute.
I mean, that's a fine form of physical exercise, right? They love dancing, they love music. Get them to create music, learn an instrument, right? There's so much that can be done together with them, parents. So please do that. And we've got to move on, but I think it's very, very important that the awareness is when we have programs like this, parents are aware of how much the children are being deprived and that we really need to go forward. Because my big worry is that even when schools start, we are saying start, that there will be a situation, because one of my niece actually who's in the state said that they have started where in her particular state, but they're also having online for parents who are scared to send their children. So these are realities that we might have to face. And I think people like Ashan might have to actually talk about these things to parents. Okay.
Time
Right.
up. Thank you very, very much. We'll have Dr. Tara take on. We'll give you additional minute, Dr. Tara. Okay.
Yes, I just want to continue from where I left, actually, really to respond to Nirmali, because the issue of reopening schools, I mean, this is something that we actually don't need to think alone on this major issue, because everywhere around, mainly the main developed countries have done their own studies. So it's a risk you take. It's a calculated risk, and that risk has to be managed. So all policy decisions, whether to open, whether not to open, have been based on science. And that's what they did in the UK and in the US, Singapore, and countries like that. So in terms of managing the risk, I'm just going to quote very quickly the WHO and the Center for Disease Control. This is a publication that came out February 21st this year. Outbreaks within school settings is typically lower or similar to the outbreaks in the community. In other words, when mitigation strategies are adopted, like mask wearing, distancing, and so on, the outbreak within a school and an outbreak in a community will actually not be different. So the issue of managing risks and the importance of it. Of course, coupled with that is the importance of speedily vaccinating all teachers, ensure that those teachers are double vaccinated as rapidly as possible, and they have used low-cost testing methods, which is now even bought over the counter, where students test themselves, you must have heard. So the key here is the transmissibility of the virus, because the teacher-to-teacher transmission is very high. Elder student to elder student transmission is very high, but younger to younger is not high. So in a country like ours, now I'm coming back to Sri Lanka, where according to the census 2019, our internet penetration accessibility for school-age children is less than 38%. And a study we did from Education Forum Sri Lanka last year showed less than 6% of students had actual real-time online classrooms through Google or whatever other device. So it becomes imperative that the decision to reopen schools has to be vested with the school authorities, with, of course, regional health support like the MOH, PHI, and so on. And the re-entry has to be choreographed extremely well. So what I want to say is that we have to manage the risk. It is extremely important. Once the students start coming into school, I think it's extremely important for us to understand the necessity for diagnostic testing. Here, it's not COVID testing, diagnostic testing to see what are the learning losses. We don't encumber them with the massive curriculum that they're used to having. Reducing the academic burden and to ensure that we use some testing system, which ideally the NIE should develop, but if not, at least educationists and regional education authorities, and definitely postponing the exams. You cannot have highly competitive, stressful, stress-generating exams. The UK has cancelled all its exams, so has Scotland. Several countries have either postponed or cancelled exams. So trimming the curricula, reducing the academic burden, postponing or cancelling examinations until the end of 2022, managing the risk, speedily improving the vaccinations, introducing low-cost testing with universal mask wearing, I think is the kind of way to go. So do I have a minute more, Pastor Kenda? I can touch on,
You can continue. Actually, you have another 3 minutes.
Oh, great, lovely. So I am now only going to the question that has been allocated to me. The first one is, I'm just going to quickly say what the question is. What are the new strategies for 2023 education reforms? What will they face if online platforms are needed? Firstly, I must say that I didn't have a direct involvement in any way in preparing the 2023 education reforms. I'm only going by what I have read in the book. One is that it's going to be a module-based system with authentic learning. So obviously the problem-solving element, case studies, group work, activity is part and parcel of it. That's what I was told, which is great. But if we are going to, at any stage, having to revert back to online teaching with this tiny percentage of students with internet accessibility and device accessibility even less, I really don't know how we can even think of pursuing this type of modular-based authentic learning and activity-based learning in the way that is being suggested. I am not sure about it at all. In the 2021 budget, a sum of about 15 billion rupees has been allocated for improving digital infrastructure, 4G connectivity, and so on, expecting the rollout of digital infrastructure to happen speedily, because obviously the kind of things that we spoke about, artificial intelligence, is something that is a reality. Online, different types of online platforms students have to interact. So without that kind of digital infrastructure and device availability, I really don't know how that's going to happen. The second question that was given, what are the challenges about the current learning model that I would like to see improve with the new reforms? Firstly, definitely the reduction of content. We can't have grades 6 to 9 having 13 subjects, massive subjects. We have to have a reduction in that. The grade 5 scholarship exam, in my opinion, I know it's not applicable to St. Thomas's, but I have to say It's an atrocious burden on a 10-year-old child's brain. It actually regresses his mental growth, gives depression, migraine, all kinds of mental health issues. So either my personal
1
choice
minute
would
more.
be reform the grade 5 scholarship exam drastically, make it into a simple intelligence test or something to that effect. The class size has to shrink from 40, 50. We have bloated classrooms. It has to come down ideally to 35 or less. But sadly to say, there was a circular which prescribed 35. It has now been reversed. And the teachers, finally. The teachers is the backbone of any education system. They need to be empowered. They need to be endowed with lots of attractive incentives and allowances. They pulled a huge weight during the last 15 months with the smattering of online education for the children of this country. So I think the teachers have been completely neglected. And I think they need to be, they are the heroes next to the healthcare workers, obviously. They are the heroes and they need to be felicitated right royally. I will pause at this moment and I'm very willing to answer any questions. On
I totally
the topic.
agree with Tara. I think our teachers have to be really felicitated. I think there must be teachers here. Thank you, teachers, for all the hard work that you have put in. I'm so thankful that I'm not teaching anymore. I'm only observing. And I really admire these very brave people who have embraced this within a month and done what they have done. Thank you so much, teachers over there.
Thank you. Ms. Ruanti, over to you.
Thanks, Pastor Kenda. So the second question put to me is, how confident are parents in the teacher ability to support their child's education during distance learning? I'm very happy to come immediately after Dr. Tara Dimel, because I completely, wholeheartedly endorse her demands and her requests to cancel all exams and to drastically reduce the syllabus of the local education, the local syllabus. The question that has been put to me, I want to answer in that context. So how confident are parents in the teacher's ability to support their child's education? This question is important because I feel we are really asking the wrong kind of questions we should be asking as parents. I think we parents really complicate matters when we expect and demand from both our children and our children's teachers something that is entirely unreasonable and unachievable. In my opinion, it is not possible for teachers to replicate this distended local syllabus online without seriously compromising the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of their students. Now, we as parents, we need to understand this, right? It may be different for children following international school syllabi, but if I'm talking about the local syllabi. If we don't start focusing our efforts and our energies on these questions, which is the changes that need to be made, right, in the present local syllabi and the system, we are really not supporting our teachers to support our children. Because we all know the local school, the system is just, it has far too much information. It's just piles and piles of most irrelevant facts. My daughter is in year 8, and as Dr. Tara Dimel said, she has 13 subjects and all of them taught online at the moment. And the mode of examination it depends on regurgitation. So they are memorizing these things online. This is just numbing to children. It's just mind numbing. And it is not fair to demand our teachers to engage our children online with content that is as irrelevant and voluminous as this, right? So if online schooling looks like it's going to be something that is going to be at least even a partial reality in the future, we as parents, we need to support our schools in demanding content that can be taught online. And we cannot complain about teachers. There are the occasional teachers, who care enough about their students. They will stray away from classes and they will engage them in games and, real world activities, etc. And I have seen parents reacting against this, saying those teachers are not covering the syllabus. Now we can't have our cake and eat it, right? As parents, we need to choose. Do we stand in support of these exams and this syllabi? In which case we cannot criticize our teachers for doing what they are forced to do, which is essentially force feeding our children with pages and pages of facts online, right? We cannot then demand them to be creative and innovative. They just don't have the time or the capacity, and frankly, nor do our children, because they are exhausted. If, on the other hand, we stand up for our children and we stand in support of heads of schools and staff who call out this system of education, who recognize it as unhealthy, right? Even in a physical state, it was difficult and unhealthy. On an online state, it's just madness, right? And who demand that teachers be released from the burdens of preparing children for these obsolete exams, then we can ask our teachers to begin to engage our children creatively and in a manner that is more healthy. So we can't have it both ways. And I really want to, as a parent, I take responsibility for these double standards that we have. And I call on all parents to really take a hard look at what they're demanding from schools, what they're demanding from teachers, and what we are imposing on our children. And take responsibility for all of this and stand by our decisions and stand for it publicly. I think it is time for a sort of a public call to parents to say, come out and now call the system out for its inadequacies and stand up on behalf of your children and stand up on behalf of the schools that your children attend and say this has to change because the damage it is causing, even if it is not immediately clear and clear to you now, it will surface somewhere down the line in your child's future, and it is lasting damage.
Thank you, Ruanti. Really appreciate that. Dr. Ashan, over to you. Now, just to let the audience know that if you have any questions for the panel, please be kind enough to post your questions in the chat room so that the panelists themselves can pick it up, right? So if you have any questions, post it on the chat room. Dr. Ashan, over to you for your last presentation.
Okay, so before I actually start off with the topic that was given about the worry that the parents have about sending kids back to school and how to address that. Well, the problem is it's not purely medical, right? So the cases that we are getting right now, so people are scared of this concept called multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, MIS-C, that we've been seeing, and it's a very rare syndrome, and we have been because we are seeing this disease on full spread right now, and with that we are seeing a few cases coming out around the country, but the communication has been so prominent about these few cases that everybody is talking about, but like the thing that we have to understand is like nobody has succumbed to them, like up to now, with the multi-inflammatory, like the multi-system inflammatory syndrome per se, the children, yes, they do get complications, but they do survive. And this, on the other hand, like this is not due to COVID, like this is an after effect of COVID due to COVID. Because most of the time it's impossible to detect the COVID symptom because children will not show symptoms most of the time, and then afterwards this thing. So things have been blown out of proportion, but it's very difficult to curtail these things in this modern day of technology. Every little thing gets highlighted, and if the same was done for dengue, I don't think the parents would have sent the kids to school either way, like, because even dengue had bigger repercussions than this on children. So with that, I'll get back to my original topic, okay, on how to actually do a few things that could help the children. So the first thing where I left off, if you are going to help your child to navigate this digital world, first you will have to learn the skills. Because see, like what happens is when we are not competent to handle ourselves online, the digital the technology skills are not good. We usually ask children to stay away from it because we don't know it. We have heard so many stories that it can be misused. So you become very defensive, but this is not a game that you can win with defense, but you'll have to have a good offense where you empower your child to understand, okay, this is how it works, because we do this for alcohol and tobacco education. We tell them how, subtle messaging have been put into cartoons and everything, and they're simply trying to just change your mind. We give the kids a head start on how things can be, how things can go wrong. And we always tell them to come to us, have a chat. We keep ourselves open so that we become the best friend to the kids. So we need to do the same with online teaching and these digital platforms. You have to be skillful. You'll have to learn if you don't. So you can't simply say no to kids because you are not competent. So that's one thing. Then we are losing the social skills, but the best you can do is at least organize, like a few meetups for the kids, the friends. So like for my kid, we've been doing it like, the friends' kids whom they've been playing together before this epidemic started. We've made sure that they keep touch at least through online meetings, because that's the best you can do. And this might be a chance to, continue those friendships and the social skills at least. And then about the grandparents and the extended family. So don't cut off the children. This has been specifically mentioned by the UNICEF as well, because we tell no digital, but to build connections, to build relationships in this time of complete disconnect, it's something that we have to do. So we have to take that on board. Then the other skill, because when it comes to gaming, or because children will get into gaming, that you can't stop, because that's something that children would love to explore. When you're talking about real life sports and all, the online gaming also becomes part of it. So rather than just allowing them to get addicted, like there's a new trend of teaching kids how to take up coding, right? Basically, rather than just doing what the others want you to do, you take control of the situation. You entice them to learn how to make games, because now there are so many easy platforms like Scratch and like Tinkerbell, where you can develop like the gaming on mobile apps and like computer-based apps, where kids will actually learn some logical reasoning. And mathematics can be fun, because I've experienced that with my child, like, because once he started taking up coding classes on his own, like he wanted me to put him to, because this is available online as well. So once he started doing that, he wanted to learn more advanced concepts in mathematics, whereas he did not want to do that when it's there in the curriculum, because now the child is driven to understand it. So I think there are a lot of positives you can take out of it. And apart from that,
1 minute more.
Parents, right? Thank you. So the parents have to start looking after themselves. We are all talking about what we can do to help kids to be comfortable, what we can do for kids, but don't forget about yourselves, because you are going through the same problems and sometimes worse in handling all these things, but kids are looking at you and looking for inspiration. So if you do not look after yourself, and if they see you suffer, and a lot of people are talking about, compromising and sacrificing. No, it's not. If you're not looking after yourself, if you're not happy, the effect on children and how they're handling the situation at home will be much, much worse. So before I close down, just one tip, because this long-term vision issues and all, people who are sitting in front of screen, there's what is called a 20-20-20 rule. So when you're working on screens for long hours, one thing is don't be seated. Try to at least get up. That's why I switch off the camera every now and then, because I have to get up, because I keep telling, if you are seated in one position for more than an hour or two, you run your risk of having heart attacks and all. So apart from that, if you are spending more than 20 minutes looking at a screen, for 20 seconds, look at an object that is at least 20 feet away from you, which will reduce a lot of headaches and other discomforts with regard to your vision and this online thing. So given the time constraints, I'll stop there. Yes. And hand it over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ashan. Okay, one of the questions posted, I sent it to Dr. Tara. Dr. Tara, if you can respond to that question, would be really appreciative.
Yes, so the question goes like this: teachers are doing their jobs excellently. However, it's difficult for us to get the child's attention on work. Finally, it's a lot of pressure to the parent. Work has to be sent before the deadlines. But when we cannot do that, I think we feel sick. I think that's very rational and correct. But who sets the deadlines? Why deadlines during this critical period of a pandemic? Children are stuck at home. They are imprisoned. I would call them, they are shuttered inside a room with a screen, those who have online access, that is. Why this rush for the deadline? Cannot schools be a little more sympathetic? Cannot teachers be more accommodative? Okay, if there is an O-level exam beckoning in the corner and you need to finish syllabuses, can't you contest that? Now I'm going back to Ruanti, who I completely agree with. There is no demand from teachers. There is no demand from educators. Reduce the content. Please remove deadlines. Please postpone, cancel. There is no big deal if you push the exam by 8 or 9 months. If other countries that are more developed can do that, why can't we do that? Why is it that we are not in a position to voice this? That's why I completely endorse Ruanti's position. Why is there no public outcry?
Tara, the British system, of course, they even to university, they are getting into the universities on the school-based assessments. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, school-based assessments, as I told you, which came in the latter part of last century and with you at the beginning, the school-based assessments have not been, I mean, for many reasons, done the way that we don't have a proper system for the school-based assessments. But I do know that the British system, even the university entrance now is all on that. And that's also a lot of pressure, I can tell you that. I'm in that system now, right? And so are the syllabuses. And so, I mean, there is a lot of stress in that system as well, right? And even at O-level, they do 14, 15 subjects, some children. So there is no ideal system in any of those places either. So before we go on about our system, I think we really need to realize that as well. And we have our system also has produced a lot of creative people, and with what happened with your SBAs and things like that, if they were done properly, there was so much of opportunity for children to really create and go up in that Bloom's taxonomy. So, but I do know that getting into universities this time in all those places have been on the school-based assessments, which we can't do here now because we don't have that data in that manner.
So
I was told lift those systems here also, Tara. I was listening even to the Indian, I've been listening to India and, you know, things that come in. There was somebody who came from the IB system. Yes, IB system is a totally different system. So the Indian education is really up in arms with some of the things that were being said. So I think we really need to look at, but I'm very happy, Ashan, with what you said. And Father Mark, I would like you to actually to have people like Ashan talking to parents all the time, and maybe to parents of other schools also, because when you listen to the TV, and yesterday there was a huge focus on this other thing that you spoke about, but it's always many children with comorbidities who are having a problem. But when it comes across like that, you know, parents just get frightened naturally. So I think you really need to look into that and Father Mark, it would be good if we have a very good awareness thing before schools close on parents how to handle this, schools reopening. I think it's really important. Tara, don't you think so?
Yeah, just one thing that I was going to continue with that. See, there is this plan to introduce these new reforms, which I mentioned, which I read about actually in 2023, which is supposed to have a lower content, which is supposed to be more child friendly and so on. If it is so, why can the whole thing, this reduced system, be fast tracked and introduced in 2022? Why wait for yet another year? And here we have a golden opportunity to experiment in a positive way, obviously, in a very considered and cautious way. And it's no major deal if a child has more playtime and more activity and more co-curricular events when he returns back to school, whilst dealing with a reduced academic content. and reduce the burdens of the exams. So
So
if
that would-
teachers, St. Thomas's College is privileged or a private school, you have the autonomy, you don't have to wait for a message from Isrupaya, you can do what you want. So, I mean, if this whole thing about deadlines and meeting
Yeah,
various
that's
types of deadlines, which is, I think, ridiculous, particularly in a private school like yours. Government schools, those poor teachers, those poor principals cannot take decisions on their own, as you know. So
And
I
actually
just
in
want
Sri-
to
in Sri Lanka, as you said, I mean, in schools like St. Thomas's, we don't have the grade. I mean, grade 5 is not a need, but in England, you have at grade 9, you have an exam. They're optional, but those exams are there. They have a huge exam system there. So we need to go away from that, definitely. And grade 5, as you said, Tara, should be actually IQ-based exam. But it has to be done slowly, because the people, if you work, I mean, I'm sure you do know this because you were secretary. There is a lot of hype with that exam, with the children in the school. I know when I was in government schools, and even the kids are very excited with the exam. That's what I used to be so surprised about. They are so excited with that grade 5 exam. I couldn't believe it, but I did witness that. So we are an exam-oriented culture where I mean, I think parents and children have to wean themselves away from this. As you said, deadlines and, you know, being frightened of exams, anxiety, this 9 A's business. I mean, O-level is not a competitive exam. Why is everybody running after 9 A's? It's not necessary at all, right? So I think we need a lot of awareness and education into all of this. Parents, I think you need to take away that anxiety. Don't worry. There's enough room in this world for all of us. Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Ashan, can we move to your question that has been posted? After that, we'll move to Ruanti's question. Dr. Tara, if you can sum up a bit of what you want to what you were saying, and then we will take it from there. Okay, Dr. Ashan.
Yeah, so with regard to like, how do we keep away from addiction? So I think that was the basis of what I've been discussing in the first section. Not everything that you see on screen will give rise to addiction. So just because somebody works on a accounting software, working at office from morning till evening, he's not going to come home and switch on the computer again and start punching in numbers, because there's no addiction component in it. There is no gratification, instant gratification that comes by just, you know, typing in numbers. So what drives addiction is that factor of instant gratification. So we have to understand which components of this child's use of digital screens drives this addiction component. So it happens with social media. It heavily happens with social media. But the thing is, when you look at how the job market is evolving, we were learning commerce when we were in school, but probably children will have to learn how to earn money online, because that's becoming, so the virtual reality, augmented reality, now they're saying deep fake, all these things are coming in. So with all that, like, the job opportunities will lie with these opportunities. So we can't ask children not to go online. We have to be very careful when we allow, and especially the age limits. That's why even the platforms have an age limit for social media. And when it comes to online gaming as well. So there are certain things that gives rise to addiction. We have to watch over them and not to worry about the child doing his homework on the screen or doing, you know, like attending to the schoolwork, because that will not have that instant gratification type of thing. It will be similar to reading, but as long as, you know, you keep the distance, you know, stick to that 20-20-20 rule, all of these things, it's similar to reading off a piece of paper. So that's why I wanted everybody to understand there's a stark difference between things that drive addiction and simply the learning material.
Okay, Ruanti, if you can respond to the question that was posted to you.
I'm sorry, Pastor Kinnard, it's a comment, not a question. I don't see the question there. It says, I have seen some wonderful strategies and systems used by Form 5 teachers at STC.
Okay.
That's good to hear. That's good
Yes,
to hear. That's lovely. I think we
Okay.
really need to appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, Anya, sorry, Ruanti. Dr. Tara, if you can respond to that other question, which was posted to you on the A levels.
I'm sorry, I haven't seen it. Does the
Okay.
questioner mind asking it on?
Okay, it says, is it practical to cancel exams, specifically A levels? A levels A's university entrance pre-COVID has already were already competitive. Wouldn't postponing it, put 2 batches in competition and burden them even more?
Yeah. So in the case of the advanced level, obviously there's a complicated situation, but that doesn't mean we should just do away with that complication and immediately prescribe the dates for the exam. When the exam was held last year, that was okay because the kids had just been out of school for 3 or 4 months only, and the kids anyway had prepared for the exam. But here we are looking at a situation where children have been out of school for 15 months or more, and so much of inequity in the type of training and education those children have got. So I think this is a time where we really have to manage certain situations here together with the UGC, together with the universities in terms of university entrance dates, cutoff lines, and decide on a strategy where we are going to minimize the inequities these students have had in the last 15 months. Look at the situation where we have less than 10% of students with actual online education face-to-face, like we are talking now. Look at a situation where children have to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning using one device through a tuition master's training. I mean, those are criminal. So in such a situation, having a competitive exam like the advanced level, where the grades, the Z score will determine their entire future, I think that is catastrophic. All I'm saying is that the authorities have to sit around the table, the exams department, the commissioner, the UGC, decide on something that's going to give the least amount of burden for the kids who are about to face the exam. It's not impossible. See, lots of difficult situations arise. When the tsunami hit, we had about 350 schools completely destroyed in 5 to 6 districts in the country. Again, there was an issue regarding school admissions and so on. I mean, it's not as colossal as COVID, please don't get me wrong, but it was a question of managing the situation. So you need to have all the stakeholders around the table, have an intelligent, sensitive discussion. And it's not an answer that I'm going to tell you right now, whether you should have it or not, but my fervent wish is consider postponing it by several months until these kids who are going to face the advanced level have got up to speed, at least to a little bit, in a comfortable setting, getting prepared for the advanced level, which is the most critical exam in terms of a school leaver. That's the opinion I have on that.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tara. Ruanti, if you can respond to that question that I just sent you. And the last part is, how can we request the change of the syllabus? So this lady has mentioned, this gent has posted something. If you can respond to that. And then I will hand it over to Father Mark.
I mean, yes, we're back to the, all fundamentals of sort of social change and, people power. How do we change anything as colossal as, an education system? I mean, literally everybody just has to commit to doing it in whatever forum that they can. I know Dr. Tara Dimel has an organization that is pushing for this with Dr. Sujata Gamage. I mean, ideally, principals should come together. I think, all principals of private schools should seriously start talking, because Dr. Tara Dimel is right. We have some agency. Not a lot, because I know there are checks and balances, and I know that, principals and heads are bullied and harassed, the moment they step out of line. But still, this is a crisis. So in a crisis, people can demand things, and people can say enough. Before this, we had a problem. The education system was a problem. Now we are in a crisis. And what Dr. Tara Demel said is soon we are heading towards a catastrophe. And that will be when these kids who we are forcing to be online for up to like 80 hours a day, when these children grow up, right, then we are going to see the catastrophe. When they become adults who have all sorts of issues, they don't know how to engage, they might have addictive personalities, all sorts of things that we have actually no idea what this is, because we as children didn't go through this, right? As adults, we are struggling with our own addictions now. I mean, I got my first smartphone when I was 40. Right? Up to then, on principle, I refused to own a mobile phone, right? In the last 5 years of my life, right, I have observed my own personality changes because of this thing, my own inability to concentrate, my own, ups and downs of, temper and things like that. So if it's affecting adults, imagine the impact on children. So how do we change? How do we make these changes? I mean, parents have a tremendous voice when they speak collectively on behalf of their children, and not only their children, the main thing is on behalf of other children as well. I mean, recently, in response to a talk that I recently gave, which was, saying in a crisis, don't harm, first do no harm, right? In a crisis, we shouldn't harm our children. In response to that, a parent sent me a message saying, very good talk, but luckily we don't have a problem anymore because our son just finished his O-levels. Right now, that doesn't, that kind of attitude really doesn't bring about any good change. We have to work on behalf of our children, other people's children, the children who don't have devices, the children who are turned into addicts, all of that. And we have to do it because this is happening on our watch. As adults, this is our problem. My parents dealt with the problem of 1983. That was on their watch. That crisis happened, 89, 83 happened on my parents' watch when I was a child. This crisis is happening on our watch. So we just have to do something about it, instead of passively waiting for, somebody to do something, and then sort of ambivalently supporting the winning side, right? I mean, that attitude really has to change. Otherwise, the parents who can afford to will, send their children abroad or whatever. And I mean, and that's what people are doing. You can see that, you can already see that bleeding is happening in society. People are leaving the country because they are fed up. But for those of us who want to stay and want to take on these challenges, these are the real challenges. And these are critical challenges, which will form not just the present, but absolutely form the future as well. So, I mean, I don't have an answer. I just have a kind of plea to just think in as many ways as possible, creatively as possible, support each other, and try to really agitate for change on behalf of the children in this crisis.
Can I just add
Very
something
much.
to what Raj
Yes,
said?
Dr. Tara.
See, like most of the people have commented in the chat box, the Sri Lankan education system has been in a crisis, was in a crisis, and then COVID came and it made the crisis magnified. And it's also a wonderful opportunity because this is the time the government is also contemplating on introducing reforms. What better time for COVID to come and engulf us, I thought, when I looked into it. They are processing it. They are discussing at the NIE. They haven't come into a firm conclusion, but they are also in the midst of trying to trim this, listening to people and so on. So if anybody asks me, what's the best time for a public outcry? What's the best time for unity amongst all educators, principals, teachers? If the private schools give the lead, I will not be surprised if most government school principals also join, because we have discussions with them at our forum and they come out with extremely creative ideas. And what a justifiable demand. What are we demanding? Reduce the burden, the mental burden on the children, 4.3 million. Don't compel teachers to overload these kids who have had it up to here in the last 15 months. Make some concrete suggestions. Go and meet the minister, Professor J.L. Piris, who I'm pretty sure will give a hearing. But if, as Ruanti said, everybody sits in his or her corner, quite, very happy to complain, but then again, be ambivalent, then we are only actually facilitating our children becoming robotic, becoming like zombies on our watch, as she quite rightly said. So in our own little way, in our education forum, we gather zonal directors. There are 99 zones in this country. I have had a lot of dealings with most of them, so I'm friendly with them. We talk to the provincial education directors, trying to empower them to take decisions, because as per the constitution, the education is a devolved subject. They actually have lots of ways of taking decisions, but they are scared. This is Sri Lanka. So we try to do it in our own little way in the government sector, but I think you all have a wonderful opportunity, a leading private school, giving leadership. This is not a revolt or anything. This is a justifiable plea, a plea to reforming the education system in a way, not just for post-pandemic, to make sure that the kids are becoming human and not being made into robots eventually. Sorry for having taken up a lot of time, Pastor.
No problem, no problem. Okay, Dr. Ashan, if you can have your closing remarks on the question that was posted, and then I will hand it over to Warden Mark. Let me also tell you, as Dr. Ashan responds, this entire meeting is being recorded and we will post it on the PTA website so that all of you can have access to this. Dr. Ashan, you are muted, Dr. Ashan. You're muted.
Sorry about that. So we've all discussed about how out of line the education system is, and a lot of we do have to do a lot of community mobilization, but at this point, what can we do? We still force our children to do the things that are expected, even though they're overburdened, there's a small ego factor here. So just a small thought, leave behind, because I spoke to the class teacher last week, and because there's nothing the class teacher can do, that work is expected to be done. But if you simply tell them, look, the child does not have enough time, and they also do understand, please take your time to talk to the class teachers. They're the nicest people. Especially my experience at St. Thomas's has been fantastic as a parent, because simply you just need to talk and tell, look, my child needs time, because they're asking why people, how can children play outside, because they don't have time to do that. But it's your child. You would not depend on anyone else to look after your child. So take responsibility. If you know what is best, keep aside your ego and this comparative evaluation. The other one's child did this, so my child also have to do that. That type of attitude, keep it aside. Just think about what is best for your child. And if it is not this, the rat race and this thing of filling off so many subjects at once, give him the freedom, at least for now. Let the child develop, because the system change will take time. And what you do with that also, your communication will be a tumbling block for the system to change. So do take measures even right now. So don't just let your child go through the pathway jolly well knowing that it is not the correct way to take forward. So that's my final remark that I wanted to leave you with.
Thank you very, very much. Father Mark, any closing remarks before I hand this time over to Asirini for the vote of thanks? Father Mark.
Yes. Thank you, Pastor Kendall, and thank you to our panel for that very stimulating discussion, which I'm sure will get us all thinking about a number of things. I just want to share a few observations and share some news with you all. The the fact that only a few parents of the 2,800 odd children in the school, only about 300 or even less have been able to participate today is regrettable. And we need to find ways of communicating to the majority of our parents. That's very important, because if the parents are not going to be on board with some of the things that we want to propose over the next few months, then our initiatives are not going to go very far. I'll give you a little example. As a policy, St. Thomas's does not push children to sit the grade 5 exam. That's a very clear decision, policy decision. But if there are children who opt to do the grade 5 exam, we do register them through the school. But the school does not take the responsibility to prepare them for the grade 5 scholarship exam, because we don't think that exam is fair by the children of that particular age group. Now, I know there are a number of parents who are quite disturbed by this particular stance of the school. And recently, for example, when the sectional head of grade 5 met with some of the grade 5 parents on Zoom, there was a lot of anger channeled at the school that the school was shirking its responsibility, right? But I'm afraid St. Thomas's will not push for the grade 5 scholarship exam, right? If there are children who want to sit it, we will facilitate them to sit it, but we will not push for it to happen as a general rule. The second thing that we did some years ago was to scrap all examinations and prizes and prize tests from grades 1 to 3, because there was a time when we were having exams and prize tests and all that from grades 1 to 3. And we took a decision to do away with that and replace those things with just informal assessments, evaluations of different sorts to test competencies and skills and how those outcomes were measurable. But we had a very strong reaction from parents, because you'd be surprised. I'm sure a lot of you parents would have friends who are in this boat. You'd be surprised that there are children sent for tuition from grade 1. And when they are told that the school is not having exams from grades 1 to 3, it's like a bombshell, right? They can't understand, is this a school? How can you have a school without exams, right? So we've taken some of these steps even in a pre-COVID situation. And now what we are asking from the parents is that they support our initiatives to reduce this burden on the children from grades 1 to 9 at least. We are looking at initiatives. Even yesterday and today, we spent the better part of the day sitting with our teachers in different departments, looking at very creative ways of making the teaching learning experience one that is not a burden to the child, right? But the number of parents who come back on us, why are you not giving enough homework? Why are you not giving enough assignments? When are you going to have online exams? Right? So the next few months are going to be crucial. And I must announce to you that the PTA is looking at tying up with Dr. Tara Dimel and the Education Forum, and going forward over the next few months, looking at very practical ways of engaging with these issues here on the ground, which will make the teaching learning experience one that is more enjoyable and more child-centered for your children. Now, I know some of you will be devastated to hear some of the measures that we will be taking over the next few months. You might think, gosh, these school people have gone mad. But for us, where we can, we want to make changes. Where we can. I must tell you, even though Dr. Tara pointed out that we are a private school and we have a certain level of autonomy, we are still a government-approved private school. And there are certain things that we can do and certain things that we cannot do. There is a private schools division at Isrupaya that can sometimes become a little bit testy with us, right? So we've got to tread carefully, but at the same time, we should not be afraid to take decisions where we can take those decisions for the good of the child primarily, and especially at this time. So, I mean, I can't go into the details of what has been planned for the primary and the lower secondary and upper secondary at this time, but I can tell you that as and when we return to school, and even before that, as we continue with online education, we have taken certain measures to ensure that the child has an enjoyable time and the child comes first in the equation. It will take a little time- it will take a little time to get the teachers also keyed into this, but we are focused on that. And I'm hoping that by the end of this year, we will have a transition into a more child-friendly system here at St. Thomas's. And as we go on, you will hear more about this. Yes, Mrs. Wickramasinghe.
I just wanted to say that with the reforms in the late turn of last century, they actually suggested that you scrap prize givings. That was one of their suggestions, that we scrap prize givings. And I would totally endorse that. If possible, please do that, because it's so unhealthy, because the anxiety that goes with the children and the competition that goes with the parents. I mean, that, Tara, you will remember, that was one of the suggestions of the reforms. That you
Yes,
scrap
and
prize.
also I remember it met with a considerable amount of opposition because obviously parents want to see their child marching after the stage to collect their prize. But that was a very strong recommendation.
That was a very strong recommendation. I had actually put it.
A lot of these things are doable, but the primary block very often is the parent, and we need the parents fully on board with us. And which is why in the coming months, coming weeks, you will hear more about some of these things that are happening at the college, especially for grades 1 to 9. We are not tampering too much with the O-level and the A-level grades just yet, because they are focusing on their examinations.
Right.
I mean, I'll tell you the vicious cycle. Today, if you don't get a C for Sinhala, you can't enter law college to get your attorneys if you want to practice law. Right? And I don't know whether the same is true for medical faculty. To be a doctor,
law faculty, the law college, that has been there even from our time.
Yeah. So you can see what pressure like that is on a child. You can see what pressure that is on a child to somehow or another get a C for Sinhala or a D or A or whatever, right? So there are a lot of wheels within wheels in this whole thing. And we can't address all those issues, but we'll try our best to address some of the issues, to at least make the teacher learning experience over the next few weeks and months less of a stress for the children until they come back. And we'll be sharing more and more of our plans as we go on. So once again, thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you, Pastor Kendall, for facilitating and coordinating. And to all the parents who have joined us, I look forward to your partnership with us as we try to make the best learning environment possible, the most conducive for your children to have a positive experience at St. Thomas's. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sirini, over to you. Thank you very much, panel, for being there and addressing all these questions. Sirini?
On behalf of the Executive Committee of St. Thomas's Parent Teacher Association, I would like to thank all our panel of speakers for sharing their expertise amidst their busy schedules. Firstly, I'm grateful to the former principal of Ladies College, Mrs. Nirmali Wickramasinghe, for sharing your valuable thoughts on present online education and many child-centered methodologies. Mrs. Wickramasinghe, I take this opportunity to wish you in all your future consultations in the education sector. Secondly, Dr. Tara Dimel, former Secretary to the Ministry of Education and former Vice Chairperson to the National Education Commission, I express my gratitude to you for sharing your valuable ideas on the online education and future of on-site education in the new reforms. Dr. Tara, I would like to wish you in all your work involved with the Mindful Educators, Sri Lanka and Worldwide Commission to educate all kids in post-pandemic programs. Moving on to Ruanti, Mrs. Ruanti Dichikera, being an artist and a director, I would like to thank you for sharing your innovative and creative methods that can be used in a child-centered online education platform. I wish you all the very best in all your future endeavors. Finally, Dr. Ashan Pathirana, who works closely with the MOH and a proud Thomian. My sincere thanks to you, Dr. Ashan, for giving us an awareness on the impact of online education from a medical perspective. It was an eye-opener for all parents. Hope you will be blessed to serve this country for many more years ahead. Reverend Mark, thank you for encouraging us in having this seminar. I would also like to thank all parents who participated for this valuable webinar. Good night and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, all parents. Please remember that we will be posting this, hosting this on our website in the next couple of days. So thank you very much for participating. Take care. Stay safe. God bless you all.
Thank you, Asirini. Thank you, Pastor Kendall, and thank you, Father Mark. And thank you, Tara and Vanti and Dr. Ashan, whom I saw for the first time. But please go on with the education of the parents, because that's mandatory at this point, if they're going to consider sending their children back. Thank you. Okay. I'm leaving. Yeah, leaving. Yeah.